Welcome back to the Yoga Chat. I'm your host, Montana.
And I am your host, May.
And today we have a really special guest. Her name is Hannah Reid. She has been practicing yoga since 2019. She's born and raised Nashville, Tennessee. And a fun fact about her is that she likes to do calligraphy, and paint in her spare time. So welcome, Hannah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to quickly correct you because I hate Nashville. I'm from Memphis.
Oh, Memphis. Oh, balls.
It's okay. It's probably like Pittsburgh and Philly. Like you don't want to be said that you're from the other one. So
Oh my gosh.
Understood.
And I literally practiced that too with May like twice.
Yeah, when you
totally
said
cool.
Nashville, I was like, oh shit, she fucked up. It's Memphis. It's Memphis.
It's
Yes, Memphis,
also
Tennessee.
like Dallas and Houston, where and I'm
Yes.
originally from Dallas. So I'm very sorry, Memphis, Tennessee. Hannah paints and does calligraphy from Memphis, not Nashville.
That's right. That's right.
So other than that, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Us
So are
too.
we.
Yeah, a fun thing that we also definitely want to mention is that Hannah found us through the social medias after we had Graham Guthrie's episode, the big kid, I can't remember what we called it, something
Big
about
kid on a bike.
Yeah, big kid
Yep.
on a bike. She knows Graham through the grapevine and reached out and was like, "Hey, I would like to be on your podcast." And we were like, "Yes." So if you're listening and you have been thinking like, "Oh, maybe I'll reach out, but what do I have to say? Or they're not going to want me," please reach out because we literally want to talk to everybody and anybody that's interested in chatting all the things that have to do with yoga and beyond. So this is really exciting because this is our very first episode with someone that neither May nor myself know, which is the goal. So,
Yep.
woohoo.
Absolutely. Love the goals.
So, before we dive in, we always ask the first and last questions. They're the same for everybody. And then everything in between just depends on who you are, where you come from, and where the conversation goes. So, to kick us off, what is your zodiac sign?
Okay, so I already knew you were going to ask this, but
Yes.
it's okay. I know my big three. So I am a Sun Gemini, and so is my daughter. Please pray for me.
Mhm.
And then my moon is in Scorpio, and my ascendant is Libra.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I'm
and
a
I'd say
Gemini
they're
sun too.
yeah. Oh well, we'll be fine then.
My moon and sun are yours flopped. I'm a Libra moon, and May and I are both Scorpio rising. So we've got a lot of similar vibes up in here today. It'll
Absolutely,
be fun.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'd say they're pretty spot on, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, how old's your
Um,
daughter?
so I had her in June.
Oh my
So she is
gosh.
7 months. As of yesterday, she is 7 months. So
Congratulations. That's
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Actually, so I know Graham through my husband. They went to college together as well at Pitt, and Graham was one of Andy's very best friends. Was in our wedding, and so when we found out we were pregnant, we reached out and told Graham, and he was like, "So are we." And I was like, "Okay, so old parents, hooray!"
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very humbling and interesting experience for sure.
That is the way to describe parenthood for sure. I was actually telling a friend the other day, there is not one book on the planet that can sufficiently prepare you for how your life changes when that child is placed into your arms. And you can read all of the things and know all of the facts. And it's just like, I can't think of one thing somebody could have told me ahead of time that could have fully prepared me for how different I would feel in my life, in my mental health, in my just everything. The way you feel after you become a parent, it's like this, and not to, it's a very positive experience. It's beautiful and you love your child, but it's also like you are volunteering for a lifetime of worrying about another human more than
Yes.
you've ever worried about anything else in your entire life. And it is fucking exhausting. And
Yes.
any new moms, if you ever want to bitch about it, feel free to reach out, because as beautiful as it is, this shit is hard. And I don't think, I think a lot of people talk about it now more than before, at least.
Yeah.
But I think that the depth of which a person and their life changes when they have a child is not fully understood until it actually happens.
100% agree with that. 100%. You know, people told me I'd be tired. I had no freaking clue. No clue that like between her waking up and me having to feed her and whatever, and they're like, "Oh, why don't you heal from this ginormous thing that you just did with your body? But wait, you have to wake up every 2 hours and make sure your child is fed. And oh wait, then you have to rock her to sleep, and hopefully she sleeps." So yes, I used to tell people that yoga was my most humbling journey, but yoga prepared me for the most humbling journey, which has been motherhood for sure.
That is the juice right
Yes.
there. Motherhood is humbling as fuck.
Yes, 100%.
I
But I
commend
can't
you.
complain. Can't complain. She is a wonderful baby and she sleeps most of the time.
What's her
Well, you're
name?
still allowed to complain. Just so
Do
you
what?
know. You're still allowed to complain. It's okay.
Yes. Yes.
And me, since I have no idea what it's like to be a mom of a human, I have 2 fur babies. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I have no idea what it's like. So what's her name?
So it's Olivia Jane.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Thank you. And trust me, I understand. I've got 2 fur babies now, but we actually, her middle name Jane is after our dog that was like my first child that passed in 2020. And her name was Mary Jane. And so we were like, no, we're gonna keep on this tradition because she was so much love for us. So yeah, we were like, okay, people can make fun of us for naming our child after our deceased dog, but I don't care.
I think that's beautiful. I would definitely do
I do
something like
too.
that. I would
Yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
dogs are, I mean, being a fur mom is valid. You love those creatures
Oh,
a
Yes.
friggin' shit ton too. It's beautiful also. And naming a child after a dog, I think, is great, personally.
May,
Thank
if you
you.
have any more kids, would you name them Waffle?
Yes.
I loved the picture of Waffle in her little sweater.
I mean, any dog in a sweater. So I
Yes.
never really even knew that people dressed up their dogs per se. But when I moved to Mount Lebanon, which is like a really like nice, like known to be like sort of affluent, I guess, neighborhood outside of Pittsburgh. The first day we moved in, I looked out the window and some guy was walking down the street with like 6 wiener dogs, and they were all in matching Burberry sweaters. And I was like, what the fuck? But it was also the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And ever since that day, all I want is to see every dog in like an Argyle sweater. I don't know. I just love the dogs in sweaters vibe. But yeah, so this year I went on Amazon before Christmas and bought Waffle a bunch of holiday sweaters, and I, whenever I get the chance to put her in them, I do.
As you should.
Yes.
As you should.
It's
I love
definitely
that.
cold enough for that here now. So
And here
denim.
now, I think y'all's weather is drunk and came down to the south.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're sitting at 7 inches of snow, which we
Oh my
never get, and it's 14 degrees.
Is it a
Yeah.
snow
Oh,
day? Like, is the city shut down?
So it actually snowed on Sunday night, Monday, and yes, the entire city has been shut down and will probably be shut down for the rest of the week because we don't know how to deal with this.
well,
That's
seven
so
inches is a
fun
lot of
though.
snow. It's more than
Yeah.
what we have right now, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and then of course we have one salt truck for the entire city, so this is what we're going to be like for the next weeks. It's fine.
There will be no yogas, no studio yoga in Memphis for the next week.
And that's the funny thing is the studio that I sub at actually have been having classes, but so many of them like live so close that they just walk, and I'm like, more power to y'all. I'm not walking in this. Not doing it.
Not for the yogas. We can do this at
No.
home.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I feel like it's a decent segue. Can you take us back a bit and just let us know, since May and I and the listeners don't know you at all, give us a little bit of your background and where you come from and who you are?
Sure. So obviously we've talked about I am born and raised in Memphis, have never lived anywhere else in my life. Hopefully one day that will be different. But anyway, so I guess what led me to like my yoga career, I've always been kind of athletic. I was in track and cross country, and also did color guard and winter guard in high school and a little bit in college. But So basically in high school, I started having like some serious intense like pains and stuff, especially like around my cycle. And it just got worse and worse. And it took about 7 years for me to be diagnosed with endometriosis. And So we did surgery or whatever. And since that point, I was searching for, everybody, of course, has to tell you, oh, you do this will heal it, this will make you feel better. And so many people like threw in my face, like, you need to try yoga. And I was like, whatever, like an exercise is not going to help heal me by any means. Like, y'all are crazy. But of course, I did what everyone does and go on YouTube and I tried it. I was like, I like it. It does make me feel good, but I still have pain. So like, I just didn't get it. And then finally, around uh, 2019, my husband and I got married in 2014. And in 2019, we had already been trying to have a baby for about 4.5 years, with no luck, obviously, with my side. And then, we had some issues for him as well. Um, and so we were a little discouraged and a little upset. So 2019, I just happened to see a friend that I had known through a friend in college, and they invited me to what they had, yoga on the field, where a bunch of the studios in Memphis got together and they did a power flow at the Liberty Bowl, where the Memphis Tigers play football. So I went to that, and um, at that flow, I ended up meeting one of my teachers, Amy Morse, who is one of the co-owners of Dvipada Yoga, and she encouraged me to come to their studio, and I started coming. And at first, I was just going to like, power flow classes, and I was like, oh, I actually do feel better. Like my mental health is doing better, whatever else. And then I met my other teacher, Michelle Mallory, who's the other owner of Dvipada, and ended up getting sucked in. And now I am officially like a Ashtangi. I practically do nothing else but Ashtanga. And anyway, Amy and Michelle ended up talking to me and getting me to do yoga teacher training. And at that time, I was just, I was like, okay, cool. I'll learn how to teach yoga. It'll be fun. It'll be fabulous. And within the first weekend, I had already like bawled my eyeballs out and realized that this whole like journey is not just about teaching yoga. Um, so I actually started the teacher training in August of, I think it was August. Yeah, August of 2020. So we were in COVID. We were in masks. It was a whole different experience, but definitely really cool that we got to learn like also how to teach online, which a lot of teachers prior to us didn't, get that extra oomph or whatever. Um, but since then, it's just honestly all the knowledge and everything that I've learned about myself and whatever else. I just kind of fell in love, and I finished my 200 hour that December, and immediately in January went into a 100-hour training with them to teach full primary for Ashtanga, because I couldn't get enough. And so we did that, and yeah, I haven't ever looked back, because through this, well, I'll say that my pain has gotten better. My mental health is 1,000% better. But the coolest thing of all is after doing this for, however many years, last October, I found out I was pregnant right as we were about to turn in our adoption papers. So,
Oh.
so I have a lot to thank to yoga, and people might say, oh, yoga didn't do that or whatever, but it did because it helped improve me, it helped improve my life and my mental health and mental status, and got me into a place where I could be a mother. So yeah, it's uh I just I get so overwhelmed when I talk about it too, because it is just such an overwhelming journey um that I've gone through. And I'm very, very grateful that I've had my husband next to me since 2010, going through this with me. But I can't thank him enough for being my, biggest encourager. He was the one who was like, you need to do this. If you want to do this, go do this. And so I did. And here we are, almost 5 years later. Been a, I don't even know what else to say. Like,
Well, I
You're
can confirm
amazing.
Montana and myself are both crying right now. I can
So
see it
oh,
in your face.
two first on this episode. One, Hannah's the first person neither of us know, and two, this is the first time that we're crying. So
Uh,
that's
oh,
also,
that's an incredible story.
it really is. I have so many questions, and the first one being, you are not the first person who I've heard say that they were going through either not necessarily fertility issues, but also just like feminine like health issues, and who went and did, I think with it, maybe it's just that yoga is, like we've said this before, it's kind of one tool in the toolbox of healing. And I think when people find yoga, they are also a lot of times going through something in their life that they are seeking healing for. So maybe it's also paired with a general, being kinder to yourself, anything, all of the things, eating better. I don't even want to say eating better because it seems so small, but it's not, it's big. It's just, so a lot of times I think for whatever reason, people are drawn to yoga when they're healing from something. And it's funny because I've heard a lot of people, in your situation, that they had lost their menstrual cycle for years and years and years, and then they started a regular yoga practice and they started doing all of these things, and their menstrual cycle came back, and it just it's amazing. And I guess I don't even know what my question is. I just have like a million of them, but I think I wonder if like in your head, when you started your yoga journey, was there like a flash moment where you were in Shavasana one day or leaving class one day when you were like, I feel different and I feel like something in me is healing? Or did it just slowly just happen over time? Or did you have an aha moment where you're like, oh, I feel better?
So I wouldn't say it's like one aha moment, because, as you as y'all probably know, there are several of those that, like, as you continue to grow, it's like, oh, that's the next level. Oh, that's the next level. But I remember my first level, for sure, being the first weekend of teacher training, and we had a assignment to write our sankalpa, or our intention, and what we were healing from, and all this other stuff. We had to write like a essay-ish type thing, and share it with our yoga trainees. And I trained with eight other people. I think I was number eight. Anyway, and then of course our two teachers. And I just remember going in. I had the night before, like, poured my heart out on this paper of a lot of things that were incredibly difficult for me to talk about, just in general growing up, and stuff that I had not shared with anybody but my husband. And maybe even some of the stuff I hadn't even shared with him at that point. And I remember going in, and I had just met most of these people in my training class, and I was like, I'm supposed to read this incredibly intimate, like, essay to people I don't know, basically. And I remember being about two or three sentences into it when one of my co-trainees, Hallie, had reached over and put her hand on my back. And at that moment, it was just like I took like a deep breath, and I was like, oh, this is a safe space. This is okay for me to share this and to grow and to be, just absolutely genuinely who I am without having to hide anything. And I think at that point, that was when I that day, that particular moment was like, oh, yoga is going to be so much more than a physical healing journey for me. It was incredibly um I keep saying it, but it was humbling at that point because it was like, oh shit, like I can actually share this stuff with people and these people aren't going to sit here and judge me and make me feel like, I these are things that I should keep to myself and keep secret. So, yeah, I would say that was probably the first aha moment I had where I was like, "Oh, well, yoga is a lot more than physical asana, for sure."
Sorry, let me wipe my tears off my cheek
I know.
before I can respond. I would think everything you just said just kind of like resonates really deeply right now because Montana and I just started to facilitate a 200-hour training that started this past weekend. And every time we go through it, I think about my experience as well. And I always think it's so funny that you end up in this small room with all these people that you don't know, and you find yourself sharing such insane secrets about who you are. And I think a really beautiful part of it is that for whatever reason, a lot of us feel like we have to hide ourselves. Not for any reason particularly. There's no big, deep, dark secrets, or you don't have to be like a weirdo. But for some reason, people just feel like they need to hide parts of themselves. And I think a big, huge part of like healing from anything is realizing that you don't need to hide anything about who you are. And the
Yes.
more willing you are to be just yourself, to be open about who you are, the better you're going to feel. Like that weight just gets lifted off of you. Like, why have I been hiding this? Why have I been not speaking of this? Why did I not feel safe? And it's cool that just that one safe space or that one safe person putting their hand on your back, like made you feel so supported that you remember that moment now,
Mhm.
Yeah.
as like something that was so deeply touching to you and to me now, even because I'm like, I don't even know what's going on over here. But yeah, that was beautiful. I share that feeling with you because I started to feel more myself after my yoga journey started. And you have that aha moment where you're like, what the hell was I hiding? Like, this isn't, I'm not strange. Nothing is embarrassing. Like, this isn't shameful. I'm just a fucking human with stuff happening in my heart and my head. And like the way you can actually relate to people is just sharing those things and realizing that you're not alone in anything.
Well, and I also think just being yourself, authentically yourself, and also realizing through this journey that, like, you're not for everybody. You weren't
Mhm.
supposed to be. Like, just be who yourself. The people that want to be around you will, and the ones that don't won't.
Mhm.
And who cares? Like,
Yeah. It's
That
so
is also
interesting that all three of us experienced a very similar lesson and growth from teacher training. May and I have both talked about it on this podcast, how in very different ways, because we're different people, all three of us, we were given the space to, like you said, Hannah, authentically be ourselves. And it really, for me, wasn't until after teacher training that I didn't even realize that I was hiding these different parts of me, or more so less hiding and more trying to be something or someone that I just wasn't. And teacher training gave me the confidence and the courage and the support of my fellow trainees and the facilitators to be in a space where, exactly what you said, where you feel safe to just show up as you are, and then to learn the importance and the mere fact that some people are going to love that and others aren't, and it's totally fine. um I had another thought and and then my dog whined and I lost my thought. But it'll come to me. I should
Do
pause the
you,
recording.
no, it's okay. You
no.
think on it. Let me ask a question.
Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
Haley, the girl that put her hand on your back, are you guys still friends? Are you still close?
Yes, yeah. So she actually moved back home up north recently, and so it was right after I had had my daughter. So I met up with her before she left. She had to go take care of some family that was sick. So she moved back up there. But of course, like she knows very much that she is very dear to my heart. She we've had some conversations since then that are just, like it's incredible the bond that you have with these people, because
Hmm.
I do have these conversations with those people now that I wouldn't, you wouldn't just walk up to a random person and be like, okay, so let me tell you about this absolutely mental mind crazy thing that happened to me the other day, and then delve into this like super, you know, intellectual slash like, I don't know, just intimate kind of work that you're doing on your own mental health. But like these people, like I'll text Hallie and be like, oh my God, I just had another breakthrough. So, but yeah, so of course I still talk to her. A couple of people in my training group have moved away as well. So it's hard to obviously keep in contact, especially when you have a child now. But I definitely, no matter how much we talk, they will always be a big part of my life. And I think they know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
helped me remember what I was going to ask was along those lines, like something, I guess it's less of a question and more of an observation that you telling your story and like May said, us going through our first weekend of the second round of teacher training that we're facilitating together. It's so interesting to watch how teacher training creates this playground for strangers to show up and immediately not feel like strangers. And I think I've been thinking a lot about it because every person we've had on that's gone through teacher training has had some sort of epic story where it's affected them in some sort of profound way, whether it be big or little. And I've been trying to figure out like what about it is that every teacher training creates this safe space where this room full of adult strangers feel comfortable just ripping their heart out and showing their true colors. And I feel like it's because it's the same reason, but on a macro or micro, I guess we're zooming in. So on a micro level, but like, the a big bunny ear quotes, the average yogi who practices and doesn't have any interest in doing anything beyond that, everyone can admit that there's something happening beyond the physical, even if it's like I can't pinpoint it, or even the people that are coming just for the workout, just for the sweat, like they'll even admit like this feels different than other forms of fitness or other forms of movement. So if you take that and you dissect it with a group of people who are spending a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money in the pursuit to dissect that, then you're bound to create this space where strangers become no longer strangers and closer than your bestest friend and, people you've known for years and years and years, because that's what yoga is. Hannah, I think everything you're saying, it's profound, it's intellectual, it's intimate, it's private. But when it's done within a community, then you all get to share those things. And it's still personal and intimate, but now with a group, a community, a team. And it's just, I had no idea where this conversation was going to go, but I'm so happy that it's going where it's going because it's just a great reminder to anyone that might feel intimidated. Like, here's a question, Hannah. You expressed how close you are with these people that you went through teacher training with, but before you felt Hallie, right? Is her name? Or
Hmm.
Haley? Hallie.
Callie. Hmm.
It's Hallie and it's Memphis, Montana. So before Hallie put her hand on your back, like, did you have that fear or that uncertainty of like, I'm doing this and I'm a little nervous and I feel a little uncomfortable. And then eventually you got to the point where you felt, like I keep saying it, but then where you felt like these strangers were no longer your strangers. And really, you already asked that question, right? Because you said you wrote this essay and you're like, how am I going to go explain this to these people that I don't even know and just spill my heart out? And then Hallie put her hand on you, and that's when you were like, oh, I'm safe here. And so on a different level, like they're not really comparable. That's what happens when someone who hasn't taken yoga before comes in with an open mind and takes a yoga class. It's like, I'm scared, I'm intimidated. I don't know any of these people. I don't know what I'm supposed to wear. I don't know the words that they're using or their language that they're using. But if you go into it with an open mind and you give yourself space to just feel that discomfort, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're like, oh, everyone's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm safe here.
That's the point.
Yeah. 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 No, absolutely. Because, before I found this studio, I had gone to, which I 100%, I can't remember. I know I had listened to a couple of y'all's podcasts and I can't remember who it was that said it, but like, if you don't find a studio that you feel comfortable at the first time, go somewhere else.
Mhm.
Like, because I think that was also what maybe took a little longer for me to find, to really get into it, is because I had tried another studio, had run like a week, do a week for, $50 or whatever for first time students. And I went in every day that week at the very early class, and it was packed, and not one person spoke to me. Not the teacher, not the people standing next to me, and it was obvious that all the people there had gone there for a long time. They all knew each other, but like no one ever made that, attempt to reach out to me. So I think when I went in to teacher training, which I had already been going to the Dweepata studio for a while, had felt comfort with my teachers, but was still a little unsure with these strangers. Um, I think I still kind of held that, like I was almost holding a little bit of myself back just because I had that experience at another studio. Um, and then, of course, like I got over that. And then was able to, share myself and let go of that, like, you know, almost animosity I felt towards that, why in the world would you have anyone come in? I've never taught a class where I didn't at least speak to every single person before or after the class, and granted, I'm not teaching huge classes. Ashtanga is a small community, but I kind of love it that way, at least here in Memphis, um, I never felt like it was okay to not at least welcome someone to the studio, or after they left go, "Hey, I hope you enjoyed it." And no one spoke to me. So I think I held on to that animosity for a long time until I walked into yoga teacher training. And then once I let that go, I was able to kind of let everything else go.
What's
Yeah,
cool
that's
is that your experience as a student, the experience that you had as a student that made you feel uncomfortable, stuck with you through your teacher journey. And now as a teacher, you know how it feels to be the person that walks into a new space that doesn't know anybody, that feels uncomfortable and unwelcome. And you go out of your way to make sure that nobody feels that way when they enter the space you're holding. And that's a really important part of teaching, is just to think about experiences that you loved as a student when you were only a student, and experiences that you felt uncomfortable when you were only a student, and just to be sure to, teach in a way that you can amplify the things that make you feel comfortable and welcome, and to avoid, being a teacher that makes anybody feel unwelcome or unwanted or, disenfranchised. And also for anybody who is a regular at one of those studios that has a tight knit community, to like see a new face and make them feel like they belong. I mean, everybody has a first time for everything. We've all gone out of our comfort zones to be in a place or put ourselves in a scenario where we don't necessarily feel like we belong. And it only takes that one friendly person or that one smile from the person next to you to make you feel like, okay, like someone, at least one person here sees me and makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I think that's really important, just as a teacher or even as a fellow student, just say hello to the person next to you, make them feel like they belong, because we all need and want to belong in a community, whether that's yoga or CrossFit, but it's important to be warm to put your hand on that person's back. You know what I mean? That is a gesture that was so small, but also so huge that, you think about it and we're talking about it so many years later. So just that one little gesture can mean the world to somebody.
Yeah.
I love
Absolutely.
that perspective too, May, because then it can remind us that every experience is valuable, right? Maybe not in the moment, but in retrospect. So it's like, even though that was not your studio, Hannah, you were able to gain valuable growth from it because you learned, I will not be that way. And so then it's like everything has validity and can be impactful and be a part of your journey in a positive way, even when it's not a positive experience.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you just have to be able to, take any experience and say, like, what am I supposed to learn from it? And sometimes it might be absolutely nothing. But, but in this case, I didn't know at the time that I was learning something, and now I do.
Hmm.
Like, especially when when I get new people into my classes, I almost try to I try to ask everybody before they walk into my class if I don't recognize them. Have you ever taken Ashtanga before? Um, because this is not your YouTube yoga, and I want to make sure that you understand that you're not about to understand 90% of what I'm saying if you've never taken this before. Like, because I've had people that have had some crazy looks when I start with the opening mantra and start chanting, and they're like, what the hell is this girl saying? What language is she speaking? Like, so I just, even for a new student, I'm like, have you taken Ashtanga before? Okay, let me explain this to you real quick. Like, don't be
Yeah.
alarmed. I will make sure to, you know, translate what you need to know. Um, but like you said, like just learning something from, an experience that I had, and that's definitely, I don't want anyone to walk in or out of my class and not feel like they were supposed to be there that day.
Yeah. On that note, let's talk about Ashtanga because we haven't had a strict Ashtanga teacher or practitioner on the podcast yet. Deborah Abrams, my yoga godmother, she definitely does Ashtanga and has taught it, but she does so many different avenues and doesn't do that anymore. So for someone that's listening that has no idea what the hell that word even means, can you give a little description on what Ashtanga yoga is and where it comes from and its background
Yeah.
roots?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ashtanga is actually what Power Vinyasa or Power Flow or whatever is based off of. But Ashtanga itself was created by Patabi Joyce, um, and it is a set sequence. The closing and the standing series are the same. You hold each pose for 5 breaths, and then there are 6 series. So there's primary series, and then once you've mastered that, secondary, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Um, but I think the beautiful thing about Ashtanga, which is what has drawn me to it, is, well, I'm a kind of a type A personality. So I like to know where I am in my practice so I can, manage my energy levels. But also, I think the beautiful thing about Ashtanga is that you really get to see your progress, physically and mentally, but definitely physically through the practice. As you do it every day, you start to realize, oh, like I couldn't get this spine 2 weeks ago, and like because you're doing the same thing every day, you also, in those 5 breaths of each pose, you have, to me, have time to get in there to feel what muscles are feeling what, or like, hey, this is tight. I wonder if I've got some like stuck energy or something like that. Um, but anyway, Ashtanga also is very traditional. So they make sure that we teach most things in Sanskrit. We also do an opening mantra, a closing mantra. So a lot, I think that, can kind of freak some newcomers out when you start speaking in Sanskrit. And they're like, because I remember the first time I took Ashtanga, I was like, what the hell are they saying? Like, It was very off-putting at first until I was like, okay, wait, I want to figure out what they're saying and why they're saying it. Um, so then once I dove in, so as I said, it was created by Patabi Joyce, and then his son Manju Joyce is in Encinitas, California, and my teachers actually go out about twice a year and practice with him. Um, his main student is Greg Tebb, who is my teacher's teacher. So that's also the cool thing about Ashtanga is the lineage. It's short, so like what I'm learning is not far off from what was actually being taught to begin with. So, and you'll see a lot of Ashtangis on Instagram as well. There are technically, two lineages. There's Manju and then there's Sharat, who teaches in India and Europe, and I think he comes over here, and teaches as well. But and they have two different, it's the same, but a little bit of different, ideologies. Um, for the reason that I'm so drawn to Manju and his and that lineage is yes, they have the primary series, the second series, whatever, and I'm sure that maybe this, Montana, just from knowing the Ashtanga, but previously they would say if you haven't mastered this pose, you can't move on to the next one. Well, in Manju's, view on it is why? Because there are some poses in second series that are easier than poses in primary. So why would you do that? So Manju has made it to where it's this beautiful, like, um, you know, playground almost, where it's like, yeah, you come in and you can practice, you'll definitely do the standing or whatever else, but play. Also, like, have an element of play about it too, which is why I feel like it grasps onto that vinyasa portion a little bit more than, standard Ashtanga. So, and that's my favorite thing about it is going to practice, which I haven't been able to practice with my teachers in several months. Obviously, raising a child takes away a lot of your life. But they have what we call Mysore practice, where you go in and you do, you basically, it's basically a private, in a public setting. You go in, you do your own practice with everybody around you, and the teacher just comes around and gives you your particular things. It's not led, whatever else. So it is, it's a very, transformative practice, I would say, for sure.
It sounds like the way you're describing it too is kind of like classical versus tantra, which May and I, you're going to say that? Yeah.
Yes.
We did our brief history yoga lesson and teacher training this weekend. And yeah, it's like classical is like you have to do all of these things in this very black and white way. And ultimately, life is a problem to be solved, and you must abstain from the pleasures of life in order to reach enlightenment, where in the tantric lens there's more freedom, and rather than life being a problem to be solved, life is actually the gift, and by experiencing pleasure, that is the gateway to enlightenment. So I wouldn't call myself an Ashtangi by no means, but without knowing it, my first teacher was teaching me the primary series, and I loved it, loved it. So I haven't taken Ashtanga in probably 10 years. I don't know much about its history or its roots, so that was very fascinating to learn. It's also really cool to me to hear that there is like avenues that you can take it, where there is a more like tantric lens to it, where it's, you don't have to necessarily master every single one of these to move on to the next one. It's like, get to a certain point, whatever that looks or feels like for you, and when you feel ready, or empowered, or a teacher helps you feel ready or empowered, then you can move on to the next series. May has a great definition of classical versus tantric lineages of yoga. You want to share it, May?
Sure.
It's perfect for anyone that's listening that's never done yoga before. It's
yes.
great.
And it sounds can you tell me again the two names of the lineages, the one that was a little bit more lenient and the one that was more black and white?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
Ashtanga.
so of course it was created by Patabi Joyce. His nephew is Sharat. He is Sharat Joyce, and he is more of the, classic, like, you don't move on to this until you've mastered this. And then Manji was Patabi's son, and Manju is more of the do
Tantric
whatever.
guy.
Do whatever feels
So
good to you.
Manju is the lenient parent. That's the
Yes.
parent you go to when you want to go out with your bad influence friend on a Friday night. And the other guy, which I already forgot his name, unfortunately, Sharat, he is the strict parent. And so that's
Yes.
the easy way that we teach the yoga teacher trainees how to remember classical versus tantric. Classical yoga, the strict parent; tantric yoga, the lenient parent.
100%. I would
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that. And actually, it's funny you say that because my two teachers, Amy and Michelle, they flip personalities every once in a while and will really throw you. But yes, I would absolutely describe one of them as the strict parent and one of them as the lenient parent. And it's so funny that you say that because now I'm like, yeah, I
Yes.
love Amy, and Amy is my strict parent. She's the one that will, slap me on the wrist and tell me that no. And then I've got, Michelle, my lenient parent, that's like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, let's try it this way instead. But then, like I said, they'll swap personalities every once in a while and completely throw me off. And then I'm like, well, shit, I didn't know you guys anyway.
And what's interesting about your teachers and the Ashtanga pioneers, essentially, and creator or pioneers from the creators, and the different lenses and lineages of yoga is that whether you're the strict parent or the lenient parent, the goal is the same, right? The journey and the support to get there is just offered in a different way. So it's really important to just like, I feel like it would probably, I'm answering a question for you, but I feel like it would probably be hard to pick if you like Amy or Michelle better, right? It just depends on the
Right.
day. It's
Right.
like, God, Amy, like, let me just freaking stop. But then other days you're like, God, Michelle, tell me what to freaking do. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
it's a beautiful balance of both, and one isn't right or wrong or better or worse when it comes to parents or teachers or lineages of yoga. They're all just, the goal is the
There's
same.
value. There's
Yeah, the
value in all
value
of
is
it.
there. Value is there.
Absolutely. And
So,
and it's amazing they found each other too because
yeah,
they're just perfect accents.
yin and yang.
Yin and yang.
Yes. Yes.
So I have a question about Ashtanga because everybody, you said primary series several times. What makes up the primary series? Is it too long for you to explain that, or is it like a series? Like how many poses is in a primary series?
I'd actually have to. Oh my God, I can't. I'm afraid these
Ooh,
teachers will kill me if I
putting
say
you
that.
on the spot.
You are. But what I will tell you is, no matter what series you're in, second, third, whatever, the standing poses and the closing poses always the same. What
Okay.
changes is the middle part. So I would say seated, but in secondary, it's not really seated when you're doing pincha and, headstands, all the crazy headstands or whatever. But the middle part is what changes. So the primary series, if I my gut keeps saying 84 postures,
Oh wow.
but I could be wrong. And actually, now I'm going to Google it because I feel absolutely dumb that I don't know this.
For what it's worth, to hopefully make you feel a little bit better, I was on a podcast a few weeks ago, not a yoga podcast, and was there to talk about yoga. And the guy who hosts the podcast was like, "So, can like you tell me about, other parts of yoga that aren't posture based?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's talk about it." And he's like, "No, no, no, can you like give me names for these things?" And I was like, "Oh, you want to talk about the 8 limbs?" I'm just gonna admit I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'd have to look. So it's like any yoga teachers listening to this right now. Yes, I host teacher trainings and I don't have the 8 limbs memorized by heart. While you Google, I'm gonna try to remember. So we have yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dhyana, the
Dharma?
concentration one, and then samadhi. So I guess I'm just
You
confused
do got
about
it.
one, the concentration one.
Yeah,
It's like
you do got it.
dhyana. See, look
Is
at that.
Dharma in there?
No, Dharma's not an 8 limb.
Oh.
But I love you so
Well,
much.
it should be.
Yeah, it's the ninth limb, okay? Connects them all. See,
So
but
I
this is
think
a
there's about 50. I
50.
completely
Okay.
went over. I think what I'm thinking of the 84 is how many, if you do full primary, um there are like 84 vinyasas because you do a
Hmm.
vinyasa when you sit, when you're on the floor after you're done standing, you do a vinyasa between each pose and each side of each pose. So I think that's maybe where, for some reason, the number 84 is sticking out in my head. It's going to drive me crazy. Like tonight at like 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going
Yeah.
to wake up and go, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It's all right. We've all humbled ourselves here. I thought Dharma was a limb. It's all good. I mean, we're not perfect. We never said we knew everything. So when
No.
you come take an Ashtanga class, like for the first time, if I never did it before and I walk into a studio, I would be going to do the primary series because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah, or you would do what we call half primary or Ashtanga short form. So full primary takes anywhere from 75 to 90 minutes. Short form cuts out a bunch of those like middle postures, but it's 60 minutes.
Okay.
So that's probably, if you were to walk into a 60-minute Ashtanga, it's going to be like half primary.
And now if you're someone who isn't like the best at inversions / you don't like them or do them at all, is Ashtanga something that you wouldn't enjoy, or are there ways around it?
So for the primary series, the only inversion, besides if you consider, halasana or shoulder stand, a sarvangasana or halasana, if you consider those inversions, we can work around those. A lot of times I have people that can't do those. I instruct them, do legs up the wall here, happy baby, do your thing or whatever. And then also the only other inversion in Ashtanga primary is Padahasta Shirshasana or bound headstand. So, which of course, if people don't want to do that, I encourage them to just do a bound forearm dolphin, or something like that, building that strength or whatever. But I tell them all the time, like, you don't have to take your feet off the ground to be doing an inversion. Like your head just needs to be below your heart. So,
Yeah.
you can do other things if you don't feel comfortable doing a headstand, which I know for years I did not, because I've had a lot of neck issues in my life after a car wreck. So I did not feel comfortable for a long time. And then all of a sudden it just kind of clicked. And I was like, oh, it's fine. I got it.
Love those
So
But
do
days.
you cue that way because you're a lenient parent, or do you cue that way? And is that how most Ashtanga classes that your random person would go to would feel? Or is it possible that I could attend a class where someone would be like, no, you must lift your feet off the mat?
oh no, I think most uh, if I were to say this, most Ashtanga teachers to me that are worth going to, and I don't mean to say that to sound like, like snooty or anything like that, but they're
No.
not gonna make you do something you don't feel comfortable doing. Like,
Okay.
yeah, not at all. And if you
I
find one that does,
personally
then
hear the word Ashtanga and I get intimidated immediately. And I feel like that's how probably a lot of people feel about it. So it's good to know that you can walk into an Ashtanga class and there are still modifications and
yeah,
options, and that no teacher is going to, well, no good teacher, and this goes for all yoga,
right.
no good teacher is going to force a student into something that doesn't feel good in their body or makes them feel uncomfortable in general.
Oh, absolutely. I actually did Ashtanga until I was about 36 weeks pregnant. So
Wow.
and I had to do a lot of modifications, um, once you get to a certain certain spot in your pregnancy, twists are not a thing anymore. Like your stomach's like, no, like, so there's lots of modifications that I had to do, a lot of taking out, a lot of putting in, different poses. So, I actually bring that to people's attention when they come to me and they're like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm like, well, I did this 36 weeks pregnant, so you can do this. We just might have to do modifications.
Yeah.
I'm actually creating a program now for a friend of mine who has had spinal infusions. And so there's not a lot that, we're having to think about like what she can and can't do. Everybody's body's different. So you can't force them into a posture that their body is not made to do.
Yeah.
That is the
That's the
juice.
juice.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you like how, because for at least at Yoga 6, which is where May and I teach together, there is a specific language formula that we use and methodology that we use in order to create this very inclusive, accessible practice. So if you're using that formula, it's very simple. And I shouldn't say very simple, but it's a lot easier as a teacher to create an inclusive experience because you're literally using language that anyone off the street would be able to, that's healthy, would be able to understand and follow along with. And when you're an Ashtanga teacher and you're using Sanskrit and chanting and honoring this lineage in a very specific way, my question was going to be, how do you still create an empowering, inclusive, and accessible experience? And like you already answered that before I could even ask it, which is just so fascinating. But if you could go into more detail, how would you say you mentioned, being very passionate about and aware of making sure that everyone feels welcome. And I think that's number one. So even if you're speaking, you know, Sanskrit or you're teaching in Portuguese, they feel like they
Yeah.
belong there and that you want them there and that you've recognized that they're there. But how do you stay true to the lineage and speak all of these Sanskrit words and make those newbies feel comfortable in in moments where they're like, what the hell?
Well,
That's
I think
hard.
that's yeah, it is. But I think that's also another reason why I was drawn to Ashtanga was the like the on hands or on, hands-on assist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so obviously you get those in vinyasa too, but with you being in poses for 5 breaths,
Mm-hmm.
you have a little bit more time. And I think that that helps a lot of people too. When, I tell them when they come in, I'm like, if you don't want me to touch you, fine, but just be aware that me touching you is not correcting something you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to help you, trying to make you, help you feel something, trying to maybe if I see like, oh, that muscle is, tightened up, I can kind of come over there and, kind of massage it out. And then all of a sudden you're deeper into the posture. So to me, and I mean, this goes back to, getting a hand put on me in training.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes all you need is a touch by somebody that's not creepy. That really
Amen.
makes you feel included.
Yeah.
And when people come into my classes, you can expect I'm not going to sit there and assist you on every stinking posture, but you can expect that I'm going to be watching you. I'm going to be watching your body. I'm going to be seeing what where I think you have tightness, and I'm going to come over during specific postures where I know that you need that extra oomph to release something. Because
Mm-hmm.
clearly, if you're like this, shoulders up to your ears in Warrior Two, I'm going to come over and I'm going to pull those suckers down and pull your arms out. And, because that's what you need. And just that feeling of somebody like being aware of where you need to be touched,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that actually like creates an environment where you can feel welcome because it's obvious that I'm watching and I'm paying
Yeah.
attention. And I think that's what drew me to my teachers too. My God, if I could tell you the amount of times they've come over in a posture where I don't feel like I look like I'm struggling, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, like just kidding. I wasn't in that all the way. Whoops. So,
That takes a lot of skill to be able to read a body and go do that one little touch or that one little adjustment that is going to make them feel it completely differently. Like you said, because we teach vinyasa flow and everything moves so quickly.
yeah.
Montana is great with hands-on adjustments. It's something that I would consider myself still in need of a lot of work, just because I personally don't feel comfortable doing it. But with vinyasa, you do move so quickly that you don't have a whole lot of time to really get in there and adjust somebody in a pose. And I feel like just your ability to look at someone and be like, oh, I need to touch you here. And then that's going to make them feel the
Mm-hmm.
entire thing differently. Is that something that you guys went through in yoga teacher training, like at length? It seems like something that would require a lot of like skill and teaching.
Yeah, so I think that was actually more touched on. I mean, we definitely touched on it in my 200, but in the 100, full primary training I did after that, we definitely dove more into the the physical body and hands-on assists and stuff like that. And it was actually the hands-on assists were a very big portion of that extra 100-hour training that we did. And my God, I could tell them again, like I could take that course again because I feel like I need a refresher course on that like once a year because you can do it every day and still you're like, no, I definitely need somebody to remind me how to do that again.
Amen to that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm big on like I just love to learn about yoga specifically. I love to absorb it all. I'll take the same training multiple times because every time I'm going to learn something different
Hmm.
and it's never going to be the same because it's never going to be the same group of people. So if you're able to see a training you've already done through the lens of someone else that's participating in it with you the second or third or fourth time, there's just it's the possibilities are endless. And yeah, I think part of the reason why I love offering hands-on adjustments is because my first teacher was Ashtanga based and
Hmm.
and hands-on assists are such a big part of that lineage and methodology. And even the teacher that I did my 200-hour with, she's not Ashtanga based, but power vinyasa, which is stemmed from Ashtanga and was a massage therapist. So those two teachers that I loved so much gave me Deborah Abrams and Dominique Ponko gave me just so much knowledge around how to offer skillful and not creepy hands-on adjustments.
Speaking of
Yes.
creepy, can you guys both give me a situation where one, you've had an amazing hands-on adjustment that made your life change, and two, a hands-on adjustment that made you feel not so great?
I can definitely say that I'm pretty lucky because the two teachers that I've learned from are so skillful and have been doing this for so long. Um, that when I go to Ashtanga, it's going to be either one of them or somebody that they trained. So
Mhm.
I am lucky enough to say that I don't think I've ever had an assist that has been like one of those where I'm like, oh my God, please don't touch me again. Or, um, but I definitely will remember one, and Amy will probably, if she listens to this, will laugh at me. But I definitely remember one day where I think I was in like fourth Marichasana or whatever, which is just a spinal twist with your um, one leg in half lotus and the other one bent up, and you're in this like spinal twist, and it's a really hard bind around the back and behind or around the leg. And I remember being in there trying to get this bind or whatever, and Amy walked over to me, and of course within a few seconds she had me bound. But at first she was like, all right, what'd you eat for dinner last night, Hannah? Taco Bell? And I just remember going, shit, like, yes, that's actually what I had. Like, oh my God. But
That's
then it was such
amazing.
I mean, she's such a goofball and I love her to death. But I just remember like almost her saying that made me laugh and kind of like made me like almost like lose that tension to where she could get me bound or whatever, just because she knew that I was just like holding on to it and she was like trying to get me in. So she made a joke and it got me right in it. And I was like,
Yeah.
really? That's all you had to do?
A giggle.
That's like extra skill. She's like, I'm gonna go drop a fart
Right.
joke to cool this bitch down, and then I'm gonna twist her a little bit harder. And like she knew it was gonna work.
And it did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she will also, you will probably love this space, and she obviously loved the fart jokes, but she's the one that would tell she would tell us all the time, like someone would, someone's like, well, what if you have somebody that farts in your clutch? She's like, good, fart it up, like, get it out. Obviously your body's trying to work something out. I don't care. Make my whole studio smell. I don't give a shit.
It's
And like
amazing.
I still to this day, like if I, because I've never actually experienced that in my class, but I've had where people's like gnats make noises or whatever, and then they kind of like look at me, and I just think of Amy every time. I'm like, I know it's not one, but fart it up. Who
Yeah.
Get
cares?
it out.
It's like
She's not dainty. I like the sound of Amy. Amy sounds like someone I could hang out with,
yeah.
mostly
Oh,
because of the fart humor.
oh,
That's what I'm judging
absolutely,
on. Um,
absolutely.
uh, So that was like, you've never, luckily, have had any like weird experiences with hands-on adjustments. Montana, have
Mm,
you?
I feel lucky in the sense too. I've never had like a creepy hands-on adjustment. I've had an adjustment where, so it's so funny because my favorite adjustments are with those two teachers, Deborah Abrams and Dominique Ponko, because they're just otherworldly. Like truthfully, it's just like from dancing my whole life, my body is hypermobile, and when they put me in positions that I quite literally can't get in on my own, it's just like euphoric. It's like ecstasy.
Mhm.
But with that being said, there have been times where both of them, this has happened, will put me so far into something that it will hurt my skin. And so when it hurts my skin, yeah, I'm like, my skin's like pulling and I don't want to say anything. So I'm just like, and my skin's like ripping. But so I try to be aware of that when I give hands-on adjustments. I'm like, if you're pulling like so far in opposite directions that like your skin is actually moving, that's not so comfortable. But I haven't had any like creepy hands-on adjustments, so
No.
Yeah.
I feel lucky in that sense too.
This wasn't like technically creepy, but it was also like unusual.
Mhm.
But I was in like a supported shoulder stand. So I had like a block under my hips. My legs were up in the air. And it wasn't the actual teacher, but it was a very crowded Sunday morning class. And they had like a teaching assistant going around the room giving a hands-on adjustments during. And this woman came over to me and she grabbed my foot and just started giving me the most intense foot massage that like it literally shot goosebumps down my entire body, but it was so unexpected because it felt so like it was like kind
Sexual.
of turning me on because it was so good. Like I was like into it, and like I'm not like attracted to women, so I was like, what's happening? But like it was like so like I guess it was creepy because I made it creepy, but like I love a good foot massage, and I was like, holy shit, this one's blowing my mind right now. So that was just like unexpected and amazing, and I've never seen or had anyone do that to me before, and it was just like just the way she ran her thumbs up the center of my foot. Anybody who's listening right now that's got a thing for feet is probably going to be like, oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
oh
Keep
Can
yeah.
talking.
can I also say, just for what it's worth, any teachers that are listening, if you're gonna give an adjustment where you're touching someone's foot, please don't touch anywhere else on their body afterward, because that has happened to me. And I don't particularly love feet. I don't have a problem with my feet, but a teacher has like in Shavasana, like given me like a gentle foot massage. By no means did I feel turned on by it, but then they literally came up and like pressed my shoulders down and were like massaging my temples. And I was like, your hands
Head
were
down,
on
dear.
my feet. Your hands were on my feet, and now they're on my face.
I can
So,
absolutely say I have never had anyone touch my feet with their hands in my class. I mean,
I
my
was
ankles,
shocked
yes, but not my
because you
feet.
would think like people would be like kind of squeamish about touching the feet of somebody who had just practiced
ugh.
for 60 minutes in a hot yoga class. And what's
Right.
funny is now that you think about it, she didn't only touch my feet. She was just
Yeah.
walking around probably touching everybody's feet. So that poor woman, like I hope she's okay.
No,
I
thank
hadn't
you.
thought
Maybe
about
she
it
has a
beyond
foot fetish.
maybe
Oh,
there it is. That's the hack, everyone. You got a foot fetish.
there's your creepy.
Yeah,
Become a
There's your
yoga
there's your
creepy.
teacher.
creepy. So,
Um,
we are just about, I mean, we already are over, but what is time? Hannah said the world is her oyster. But so that we don't have to keep you for your entire evening, I think it's time for our final question, which is always so bittersweet. But Hannah, since you've listened, you probably know what's coming. Do you think yoga can change the world? Yes or no, and why?
Um, I actually thought about this for a while. So obviously any yoga teacher that comes on here and says no is lying. Um, yes, I do, in the sense that, if people are open to it, I think that's the biggest thing is for yoga teachers to make it accessible. Because if we make it accessible to people, then yes, it's going to bring them in. It's going to bring them into this world and not only help them physically, but also mentally, which has been the biggest thing for me, is the mental change that I've had since I've started yoga. So I absolutely think that it can change the world, because if you put people into this space and get them feeling better, not only physically, but mentally, then they take that out into the world, and that, and put that back into the world. Um, I will say, like I also work at home, as a remote technician for an optometry uh, company or whatever. And, for a long time, I've been in ophthalmology and had a horrible like viewpoint of it. And then after I started doing yoga, um, I like went out into the world and went out to work, and all of a sudden, like my view on things had changed, and then all of a sudden the way people were responding to me and the way people were listening to me was different. And that's how I think yoga can change the world, because the world's not going to change. It's going to be crappy when you walk out there. There's going to be really crappy things that happen, but if we can get people to yoga to understand that mental health portion of it, they can go out into the world, and the way they handle these situations will be different. And that would change the world for me.
Boom.
Freshly
The fucking
squeezed juice.
the juice has been squeezed.
Yes.
I love that. It's not even, like you said, it doesn't change the world, but it changes the filter that everybody sees the
Yeah.
world through. And when you have a bunch of people walking around with a filter that's a little bit prettier, a little bit pinker,
Those
like you
colored
said,
glasses.
you would be surprised that the way your attitude affects the way you view the way other people are talking to you, the way you view situations. Like, you're going to have bad days. People are still going to be shitty sometimes, but generally speaking, I am 100% with you. I think I've said this to Montana a few times. I don't know that yoga like changed me as a person or made me a better person, or if it just made me see myself and other people through a different, like, brighter lens. And I
Mhm.
think that change that you start within you definitely just pours out into everything you do and everything you see, and your relationships and your work and your obligations, and it just makes you that little bit better. And if you're
Yes.
better, everyone around you is going to be better.
Yes, 100% agree.
So get on the
Hannah,
mat,
I
people.
I have loved this conversation so
Me
much,
too.
because just everything we talked about really like hit home for me, and it was cool to talk to a complete stranger about
Mhm.
yoga and know that we have this beautiful thing in common, and we could just talk about it for probably hours and hours more. But
Oh,
I appreciate
100%.
so much that you came on, and I loved hearing your perspective about everything. And I loved
Me
hearing
too.
about Ashtanga, and actually makes me feel like I want to go try a class.
Let's go on Sunday morning.
Where?
I can't remember what the studio's called, but sorry, I'll put it in the show
There's,
notes. But
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure I've already, my husband and I have talked about like maybe in the future moving back to Pittsburgh, for him. Well, back for him, moving to for me.
yes,
But so don't worry, I've already scoped out all the Ashtanga
there's
studios in Pittsburgh.
a friend of mine, like yoga friend of mine. Her name's Lisa. She has been going to this Ashtanga studio, and it keeps inviting me on Sunday mornings. And I just saw her this morning. She's like, come down Sunday morning at 9 a.m. It's the best teacher. So
Let's go.
we should do it.
I'll
It's
go.
it's
Love it.
hardcore in the best way. And May, you love hardcore, so you're gonna love it. But yeah, thank you, Hannah, so much for your courage and reaching out to us. We're so grateful, and thank you for sharing your beautiful story and your vulnerability. I I've been waiting for the moment to cry on this podcast, because May knows that I love to cry. But the fact that you got May and I both to cry is a huge deal, because I'm a crier, but May cried. So
I cried.
I
I
will put
cried.
that in my book of like amazing
wins.
achievements.
Yeah, exactly. May
You put
McCreary cried.
you put your hand on my back from Memphis,
Yes.
and I felt it.
Absolutely. I love that.
That's so
Love
special.
that.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you, May. This was an amazing conversation. And if you're listening and you don't know May and I, and you're interested in being a guest and sharing your story on this amazing platform that came through us that we are so grateful and feel very lucky to be able to facilitate, reach out. Instagram's the best way at the yoga chat. And that's that.
Hannah, what's your Instagram in case anyone
Yes,
wants
please
to check
share.
you out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my yoga one is Yogini. That's YOGINI _ Hannah HANNAH.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If
Yay.
anyone's in Memphis, you can go check out some Ashtanga yoga.
Yeah,
with
not
Yeah,
Yogini and
Nashville.
Hannah.
Not Nashville, but
Absolutely.
Memphis.
Not Nashville, Memphis, but reach out to me because right now I am only doing privates.
Ooh.
But we'll be hopefully shortly teaching back in the studio again.
Good.
Good luck with Olivia and
Thank you.
Olivia Jane. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope that we get to, one thing that I wanted to say too while you were talking is I would love to take your class. So hopefully May and I get to take your class one day in person even. That would be amazing. That would be just so special. So
Absolutely.
hopefully we can manifest that and the stars will align eventually.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. And if I'm in next time I'm in Pittsburgh, I'll come see y'all.
Yes, reach out
Sweet.
for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you.
evening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Y'all too.
Peace.
Bye.